Hi, folks. It's Illia here, and we're going to talk about body electronics today. We're going to specifically talk today on the healing crisis within the body electronics point holding, and through the principles. We don't necessarily have to be point holding in order to bring ourselves into a healing crisis. The nutritional program itself or the protocol, nutritional protocol within the body electronics work is usually sufficient to kick off a pretty good healing crisis. So Guy Armstrong from New Zealand is going to lead the way with us today, and then Jeffrey Schofield and I are going to jump in when we feel to. So yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Hi,
Guy.
Hey, Jeff. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, been a hectic last few weeks, but got through it.
Yeah. Oh, right. You haven't been in our discussion for a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So nice to be back, and yeah, hopefully we can provide some really useful information for budding BE participants. So talking about the healing crisis, this is basically a process by which a person moves from a level of health to a greater level of health. So this is kind of the purpose of BE and perhaps many healing modalities, but I don't think any other healing modality that I've come across has really put this sort of movement of becoming more or less healthy in such clarity, because in body electronics we don't just have, or our understanding is that people don't just have sick and healthy, like black and white, two kind of things. We have many levels of balance on a gradient scale. So a healing crisis is the movement from relative lower health to higher health. So when we're going into and through a healing crisis, we're going from our sort of current level of health to a greater level of health, and we depict this in the sort of two-dimensional drawings and diagrams in various books by an arrow going up, and of course the opposite would be going down. So if we're doing destructive things like smoking cigarettes and alcohol and stuff like that, stuff that destroys our body, that's what we call a disease crisis, where we're going from a good health down to bad health. So here's a little diagram. I this ain't the greatest. You can find much more professional looking stuff than this in the written work, but this kind of depicts, like the straight line depicts a sort of level of balance where we feel okay, and then as we're healing and we're improving our diet, we're going to go through to a period of imbalance. And so the wavy line here sort of demonstrates when we're not feeling so good, but we're getting more healthy. And then up here we have a higher level of balance where we feel relatively good, but we feel okay. We're on what we call balance, but we've succeeded in going through the period of imbalance where we feel nasty. So healing crisis can be physical, to do with our bodies. It can be emotional, to do with our feelings and our emotions. And many of you have probably heard of the scale of emotions, where we go from unconsciousness, apathy, grief, fear, anger, pain, enthusiasm. So that scale ties in really well with the concept of healing crisis, because we can see the changes in our bodies as we go up or down that emotional tone scale. A sort of a crude example here might be a person who's living in the city and smoke and they drink coffee and they eat sort of a lot of processed food, and for the most part they feel kind of okay most of the time, and then they decide one day, I've watched a bunch of Illia's videos, I'm inspired, I'm gonna go and treat my body a bit better, So I'm going to say give up the smoking, and that, of course, anybody who's been around a person who's given up smoking knows you have that withdrawal and that painful kind of that need for cigarettes or whatever, just using cigarettes as an example here. So that's like an attraction. There's a sort of a compulsion or an attraction to stay at that level of balance. But if we've given up our toxic kind of thing, we're going to go into a period of imbalance. So this often can reflect like the period of withdrawal from a drug, an addictive drug, and getting to multiple levels of balance. Showing that, you could imagine that little diagram sort of stacked on top of each other, many ways on a sort of endless continuum. So giving up smoking would be one healing crisis, and then giving up caffeine and hydrating your body would be another healing crisis. And then maybe, I don't know, if you live in a really polluted city, moving away from that pollution and moving to the beautiful forests of some nice country, and getting cleaner air would help to sort of detox you and put you through another healing crisis. There is a law regarding healing crisis that Dr. Ray wrote about, John Whitman Ray, the founder of Body Electronics, and he took an original sort of law called Hering's Law of Cure, and he wrote about this in book 2 of the Logic and Sequence series. So if you think it's prudent, Illia and Jeff, I'll read this out. So the law of healing crisis, according to John Ray, is a healing crisis will occur only when an individual is ready both physiologically, body, and psychologically. Right? The basic foundation for all healing is nutritional preparedness. A healing crisis will begin from within out in reverse order chronologically as to how the symptoms have appeared, though this is tempered by the intensity of the trauma. The individual will have the opportunity to re-experience each trauma, both physiological and psychological, beginning with the trauma of least severity. It must be recognized that traumas involving emotions, which include all traumas, will be released in order, beginning with unconsciousness, then apathy, grief, fear, anger, pain, and eventually enthusiasm, in conjunction with the appropriate word patterns for each emotion and thought pattern, sensory memory, which are accessible at each level. Unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness are the keys to apply to transmute any resistance at any level, once these resistances are brought to view through the application of the laws of love, light, and perfection. So there's a huge amount to unpack in that, and that's why I sort of wrote a whole book on the concept of healing crisis. Some people, like myself, are a bit triggered by the words unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness. So if you're triggered by that, just replace them with as much enthusiasm as you can muster. So in the sort of advanced work of Body Electronics, people really make a good go of getting down to no resistance at all. And I haven't experienced that or close to it, but I don't know if you want to talk about that in this video, Illia, or another one. But
well, I think one of the other things just to put in here, when that the line in the middle there is we're going from the entrance into the healing crisis and moving up. I mean, it's such a vast topic, but we want to really touch on different things here. So one of the simplistic things to remember, I know this helped me get through many healing crises, where it's just simply, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And if we can remind ourselves of that, and often we don't really even know if it is a healing crisis or a disease crisis. We can be doing all of these things to encourage a healing crisis, and then we're going back through symptoms, and then there's this feeling of like, oh my God, is this a disease crisis? And sometimes that answer it just can't be answered.
Yeah, beautiful.
And you just keep going with everything that is going to support the healing crisis, so that you can get through it and go through the other side, because all of the symptoms are going to be re-experienced to be released. That's the part of the healing crisis that most people really get turned off of. They may like it conceptually or intellectually, but when it actually comes down to experiencing it, re-experiencing it, that gets a little more willingness has to be brought forth with, and especially as we're going upscale. You said, it continuously goes up scale. We can watch that happen as we're going through the 49 levels of emotion that we use as a format, emotional format. And we can see that as we're moving from one emotion to the next, and how, so when we're starting in unconsciousness, we start at the bottom up. So things are very simplistic there, and very numb, very, sometimes completely, we have complete unawareness of what's going on, of what's really going on. What consciousness is there that's interacting and perpetuating in our lives. But then as we bring it up into apathy, we start to see a glimpse of it. Gets a little less simplistic. Then we go into grief. It gets much less simplistic in grief, and we get to see, we get to really feel a lot more, see a lot more memory, bring that memory into the present, and get the word patterns much more clearly there. And then we jump from there, after much transmutation, we can jump from there to fear. And when we get into fear, oh, here comes Jeff back again. I'm just going to go and admit him. There we go. And when we get to fear, then things get complex. So that's where complexity of the healing crises occurs. So things can get really chaotic in that complexity. And then it goes from there, as we transmute through fear, then we go to, up through anger, pain, and enthusiasm, where we go from there, from the complexity, then it starts to go back into simplicity, but not into simplicity in an involutionary way, simplicity in an evolutionary way, which we're actually going then, eventually we are able to access that true enthusiasm, that love within, that is the ultimate transmuter. We access it more and more and more as we go upscale. So it's important, I think, for people to know that they're going from simplicity, which, in that unconsciousness is very, it takes some time to work through all that stuff, into complexity when we get to fear, and then back to simplicity with love.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you for bringing me back to the focus of it there. Yeah, it's really important to note, I think, one of the rules of healing crisis is that when we, or how do we put this? What gets us into the healing crisis will get us through it.
Right.
So if we've taken enough minerals, or we've given up something detrimental enough to get into a healing crisis, we don't need to fear about whether we will sort of get through it if we're continually applying that same practice.
Very, very important principle. What gets you into the healing crisis will assist to get you through the healing crisis.
Yeah.
And that is more than just the physical aspects too. The physical principles, of course, that's the principles of transmutation. So when we, we have to continually transmute. If we're still have these dregs, and we're aware that there's still some dregs of what we've been working on, we just, the physical process of supplying the body with enough nutrients, enzymes, minerals, etc., to assist in the regeneration process as well. We have to provide that, of course, but the real way to get through the healing crisis is really the transmutation that we're doing within, the change of consciousness that we are experiencing as a result of our own efforts, of our own application of the laws.
So with regard to being on the table and, point holding, when we, come to one of these intensives and have our points held and hold other people's points. Perhaps we can sort of discuss the healing crisis in relation to that. So I'm thinking just the stillness of the body and just keeping our breath regular is, just as you teach, is just a really good way to propel us into the emotional healing crisis. Of course, it can be physical as well, but often in my experience, I find like there's often a huge urge to wriggle around on the table and move. And, I've been on the table enough times that I've had, desire to move my arm or something like that, for example, where I'm lying completely still for, 5 or 10 minutes and I haven't done any point holding for a while, and it's a bit difficult getting sort of back into the discipline of being still. And then I feel I really got to move my shoulder. I really need to stretch my arm out or something. And
yeah, that's a great point.
that kind of thing.
So what my suggestion on that is for everybody who's preparing right now for the June intensive is to, and I've written about it, but we'll talk about it again, is to practice every day. It's what we do now in preparation for the point holding. We don't want to start out by practicing when we get to when we're only going to do a 5-day point holding intensive. So we don't want to start practicing the basic physical principles once we get there, because we're going to miss a lot if we do that. Maybe we won't even be able to hold still the entire time. We'll be struggling with that. So I say, I think in the last, my last recommendation was to start at like a half an hour being perfectly still, and I mean perfectly still, where you do not, you can have your eyes closed so you don't have to worry about the blinking of your eyes, and you maintain the breathing, the deep and regular breathing, the abdominal 3-part breath without cessation, yet the rest of the body has no movement. So, perfect stillness. And we go through a lot when we're practicing that discipline. Things come up, pains can come up, and emotions can come up just from being still. By being still and breathing deep and regular. I mean, we can have the healing crises, start to have a budding, we can have this budding experience of a healing crisis. So it's that's where we do the preparation is, and now we still have today's the last day of February, and so we still have a few weeks. We still have a few weeks to really prepare, and that includes nutritionally as well. But I really recommend people to do that, and then they can just gradually increase. They can have at least an hour a day, and then if they are really motivated and willing, they can do 2 hours a day. Get up if and I hear all the people making the justifications, I don't have time. So there's a great answer to that. You get up an hour earlier and you go to bed an hour later. There's always time for everything that we are inspired to do. We can always make time. Yeah. So yeah, that's the best way to do it, is just to really practice being still and breathing deep and regular while being nutritionally fortified. And it's a beautiful thing that happens.
Right on. Yeah.
Do you have something to add there, Jeffrey?
Well, I'm enjoying listening to you two, being still and doing deep regular breathing. I don't know if it brought on a healing crisis for me doing that, but it is a nice practice. Probably one of the most difficult aspects of having your points held is the resistance to stillness. I've experienced people who just simply cannot and refuse to do that, even though they're aware at some point, and in particular well, I won't mention the person's name, but it's like I've tried many times, and it seems like it's the itching of the nose. They just cannot stay still and love the itching, and that's just one part of the body, of course, but that seems to be the one that stops any further progress as far as this person's understanding of these principles.
Well, the itching of the nose, when we're breathing deep and regular, the itching of the nose and the tinglings of the fingertips and the toes, which is often the other two things that cause people to want to move and stop that from happening, it's actually a result of getting more oxygen into the bloodstream. And when we get the more oxygen into the bloodstream from the breathing deep and regular without sensation, those are just common symptoms that occurs when we start to oxygenate the body. And when people are aware of that and they're like, okay, and then it becomes like you have to jump into that willingness to not want to make it stop, which is a great principle, like not fix it, not take it away, but instead increase it, be willing to increase the feeling, be willing to enjoy the feeling, and really just keep going with it. Yeah, it's kind of like the first little initiation that we get when we're being still. Yeah,
right. And to the point that you just made about our ability to consciously choose to intensify the feeling, and you can just consciously like send a command to, like if you're feeling an itch in the nose, this is something I do to transmute that, wherever it's coming from, is just to consciously say, and Doug taught me this principle when I was in Maui, actually, as far as forgiveness. It's like you take whatever the feeling is and you focus on it and learn to love it at the level it's at. But then you can send like this, intensify it to every cell of your body. And when you get it to that point, Doug taught me that a really cool way to do forgiveness, if you have the ability to visualize, which I don't. That's when he taught me this, it was like I still struggle with visualization, but some people are very good visualizers, is to actually ask your body, what's the crystalline structure, the geometrical sacred geometry of this word pattern? And if you're able to visualize your body, your higher self will give you a picture of that crystal. And then what you do is you focus on the crystal, and then you make two, and then you separate and keep in your mind's eye separating these two crystals. And then when you're ready and you feel the time is right, you bring them together with love, and it poofs the crystal to where then you're on to another pattern. It's that's what he described as the actual law of forgiveness when you learn how to visualize it, which I still struggle with myself.
Okay, so let's look at
when I was on the table.
Let's look at that.
Struggling with
visualization. So either one of you, can you answer this question? Where do we directly and exponentially increase our ability to access inner visualization in the emotional body?
I'm thinking enthusiasm or pain.
No. There's
where do we actually, you're asking us the question of where does it initiate from?
No, where do we exponentially, when we transmute a certain emotion, where does then the inner visualization exponentially increase? I mean, as we're going upscale.
I'm thinking the third eye is where you create this duality.
No.
Go ahead, tell us. I'm curious what your
anger
is. Huh?
Anger.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
When anger is the capstone to the inner visualization, upon transmutation, of course. It's the suppressed anger that keeps us from it. You know, as we're going through the emotional body, so as we're coming up, like when we get into grief, for example, let's look at that, because inner visualization is extremely important to this process. So in unconsciousness, we're not having any inner visualization. It's non-existent. When we get to apathy, we may experience something more like a feeling. And we can still have sort of this dark shroud around the inner visualization. We just see sort of like this dark shroud, but still have this ability to feel what's there. That starts to move into our awareness. Then when we get into the level of grief, connected to the pancreas adrenals, we then get often and people have described it like this. I've heard dozens and dozens of people describe it like this, where they're getting like snapshots. So they've maybe worked through some unconsciousness and some apathy. You know, they've really, and that takes a lot of effort. And you know, when people are on the table and it doesn't look like anything's happening, as long as they are present with what is there, like let's say they're in apathy and they're not getting any inner visualization, as long as they're present transmuting what is there, which is what they can access, then they're going to eventually get themselves into grief, which then starts to see snapshots. That's how people have described it over the years. So it's like this snapshots, they get little pictures, and there might be just one in the entire point holding. They might just get one picture. We take what we get and we work with that. So we expand on that. We concentrate on that visual, and we get the emotion and the word patterns that go with that visual. And then they start to, it's like popcorn. They'll start to have little, like an unfolding of more snapshots. And then eventually when they get up to, you know, they just keep working with what they have, when eventually that will move up into fear. And in fear, that'll sort of be it. So the snapshots sort of come together. So they're getting, so it's not like disconnect, like a snapshot darkness. They'll start to have a lot more inner visualization around it that is it's vague. It becomes vague, but it's not disconnected. It's more like it starts to be more like an experience. So you start to be in the body when you come to that level of awareness. So you start to be in the body at that point, and you're actually experiencing it. It's not externalized in the lower three emotions, which is always a victimized level where you're always experiencing it externally, and life happening to you. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, levels of awareness within that. But then when you get to the level of fear, you start to be in that experience. So you start to be experiencing it more in a sensory memory, which is what we're looking for. And we start to be able to see it more as that. But then if you work through enough fear, really get to the, you know, transmuting the fear and pop into anger, then when we get to anger, that's when we start to see things really clearly. We get full sensory memory in anger. So we can touch it, smell it, hear it, feel it, experience it. And it's like we're living the movie. We're re-experiencing it like we're in a movie, and it's not a choppy movie. Our perception is extremely clear at that point, that inner perception, that inner bringing that energy, that memory into the present moment. And it gets super, super clear in anger. And of course, anger is our place where two main resistance patterns are processed, and that is power and control. So that's where we really start to get into some juicy memory, and, you know, extremely clear and aware. is in anger. The deeper we go into that, and we get into the rage, I spent years in rage, really transmuting like little dregs that would come up, and eventually, and it's not like you're, just to clarify for the people watching, it's not like you're stuck in one. It's just that you are more in one than any of the others. As far as the emotional body goes, you're resonating in that level of emotion. So in other words, we're in anger, but we can work through apathetic anger, griefy anger, fearful anger, angry anger, painful anger. And that's when we get to painful anger, and we're bringing the enthusiasm in to be that transmuting force. And I say from above, but it's not, it's from within. And then when we get to the painful level of anger and the enthusiastic, and enthusiastically feeling the painful level of anger, then we pop into pain. And that's when things get really exciting. Yeah. Redefine your relationship with pain was one of when Doug Morrison was teaching body electronics. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Just one of the main principles that John Ray was shown when he was developing this work comes in, and so as you come upscale and you're working in your emotional body and experiencing the healing crisis at the various levels of emotion, then there's a tendency to not, because people want to see results. They want to, heal a broken bone, or they have a physical.
You froze. You froze, Jeff?
Internet down there needs a healing crisis.
Okay, you can go ahead, Guy, and then if Jeff comes back,
Okay.
you might have to log on like you did before, log off and log on again. But
Okay. Well, I was just reminded that the list can be a healing crisis. Like when we're going to put order into our life and fix things, then we sort of become a lot more aware of what's going on in our life.
yes, every aspect of body electronics can be a healing crisis.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Even
reading the books.
If we're willing, we can really take anything back into a healing crisis. Are you back, Jeff?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you froze.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead then and go through what I was feeling again. Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
You're choppy, but yeah, keep going.
Okay. Well, after we get up through the anger and the angry pain, and we get to where our emotional body, we start to access the mental body. A lot of people, I believe in that have done a lot of this work, including myself, tend to get discouraged when there's not the physical healing that you're promised that is possible based on the principle John was given when he, in 10 days of fasting and prayer, was given this principle. So I just want to throw that in there as far as the evolution we all go through to attain that rejuvenation of the physical body, is that until man can experience, and this is what John Ray was shown when he asked, until man can experience on the mental level that which exists on the physical, he will be bound to the physical. So that's what I was feeling when you were talking about this healing crisis in the emotional body, just to kind of make that a flow as far as,
yeah.
And then when we get into the visualization and consciousness, of course, that you and I have experienced. I don't know if guys experienced a VNC or not, but anyway, I just want to throw that in there. Guy, you have not. Okay.
Yeah, great point, Jeff. So where do we access the mental body? In the emotional body, I mean. within the emotional body? Where do we access the mental body?
Well, it's got to be above pain, or enthusiasm, I guess. That's my feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That enthusiasm.
Okay, so pain, remember that pain is a capstone to memory. So pain, wherever we are in pain within the emotional body, we can be, we won't feel unconscious pain. That'll be too numb for us to actually access any feeling there. We can barely feel any pain and apathy when we get to apathetic pain. We start to feel maybe a little bit of twinges of pain when it comes to griefy pain. So when we get to the level of grief, and we remember there's 7 levels within 7 levels. So when we get to, we have to work through, we're in grief right now. So we're going to grief, and we have to get up, fearful level of grief, angry level of grief, and then painful level of grief. We keep transmuting, and then that's what takes us, we have to go through all those levels. Then that's what takes us then into the lower levels of anger. So then it's like, unconscious anger, apathetic anger, so on and so forth. Then when we get into, but when we get to pain at each level, we are then accessing that level of awareness that's possible within that level of emotion. So if we're in fearful pain, we'll be able to see it, just how I described how we can experience our awareness changes as we go upscale in the emotional body. So when we get to the fearful level of pain, we're going to be able to feel it like we're really truly experiencing it. Then it's not sort of outside of ourselves, or it's not somebody else's fault or problem. It's actually our own pain. We start to see that a little bit in fear. In anger, we see that quite a bit more. When we get to the painful level of anger, then we can really get to we are going into the mental body, but we're not getting a full, in the anger, we're not getting a full view, a full perception of duality when we're in the painful level of anger. But we're because of course anger is all about it's one-pointedness. It's my way or the highway. It's a very me oriented emotion. So when we transmute our way through painful anger, then we're going to pop into the lower levels of pain, actual pain. So we'll have apathetic pain, griefy pain, fearful pain, angry pain, so forth. And then, and we're really starting to access, when we're in the level of pain, when we're really processing our own pain, we start to see how we created it in the first place, how we are the creators of all of the, like we truly get to see how we created it. And then we get to see both sides, especially when we get up to the painful level of pain, which is the full entrance into the mental body. Then we get to see both sides of the duality, and then we're in the mental body, and then we can really, really see our attachments to one side of the duality, the other, or both sides of the duality. And that's when the rules of the game change, as Doug used to say, where we go from the principles of love, which is applying love, forgiveness, and gratitude within the emotional body. Then we change into the laws of light. And it's the light that actually transmutes and brings the duality together. We have full internal, and we really, like when we're in the mental body through that level of pain, we have a really good view of where our consciousness is at, and what we need to transmute and remove from our perpetuated manifestations. Yeah. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's like, just so everybody knows, it's like at every level of pain, you're accessing the mental body, but incrementally. It's not like we couldn't access the mental body. If we start working on our emotional body and transmuting our way up the emotional body, we could never handle accessing like the mental body at the level of painful pain. I mean, it would just, we wouldn't be able to handle it. So it's this perfect process of, it's just like point holding. We start off with SDO points, which is the easiest to hold and the easiest to have held. You know, then we go through the endocrine points, which gets a little bit more difficult with every point that we hold on the flow sheet through the endocrine points and then into the spinal points. It's the same. Every point gets a little more difficult. And it's an externalized challenge, and it's also an internalized challenge. And like, we couldn't start holding extremely difficult spinal points when we first become point holders. First we don't have the focus to be able to do it correctly, you know, and the wherewithal and the you know, and the ability to have a focused consciousness to be able to hold that for that person. And we can't, we won't be able to transmute the, you know, what comes up within us when, you know, when we have to stand and our body goes into pain and you know, and we have to put all of that aside in order to hold points for, you know, get our elbows into the person on the table so that we can do the best job we can. I mean, it's the internal and the external part of body electronics is incrementally perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a, you know, a step-by-step, line upon line, precept on precept, and like I remember John Ray saying one time, he doesn't know how he could make it any easier for people to experience body electronics, because all you have to do is lay down and be still. It's not like you have to run a marathon. You don't have to, you know, do some extraordinary feat. It's actually the complete opposite of what we consider, you know, the fastest man, the Olympics and all that stuff. It's just be still. And that's how you get to know what the I am that we're all, that's lighting everyone's heart, the I am that I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens in enthusiasm, the I am. And the same goes for that. We get to access that part. So the you know, the I am really is that connection to the inner essence of love, you know, that you know, that creative force. And we access that every time we transmute something, every time we willingly apply enthusiasm. Because the enthusiasm, whether it can be apathetic enthusiasm, but if we're willing to feel apathy, if we're willing to feel it and really feel how shitty that feels and how we don't really want to do anything and we can't do anything, you know, the word patterns in apathy are I can't. So when we really feel that enthusiastically, we're touching upon enthusiasm. We're accessing that level of enthusiasm. And that's what allows us to move up higher in the emotional body and keep going. When we get to, you know, grief, enthusiastic grief, then we're really feeling enthusiastically and willingly how it feels to be a victim, how it feels to have life happening to us, and how give me a word pattern in grief. Anybody remember word pattern? One's not coming to me either. It's like, yeah.
I hate it when you do that to me, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So, but when we're enthusiastically, you know, accessing the love that's required, and the forgiveness that's required, and the the gratitude for the experience is required to actually make a transmutation, then we're accessing that level of love, that level of the inner essence. And then, but then when we get up into pain, we start looking, then we jump into the mental body where, we have accessed at that point, we have accessed the I am presence within us. What you just said, Jeff, I am that I am. We have accessed that. We become very well aware of it. And it's extremely painful, by the way, when we first start to look at how powerful we are and how we have unconsciously misused that power and then tried to justify it and deny it in eon after eon after eon. Come on. It's very painful. Yeah. So
I remember, I remember one of the things that John taught, and different, like when people first get on the table or they first hear the concept of learning to love pain, I just want to put out there how much programming there is in the pharmaceutical industry, or alcohol, any of the addictions, any of those things, that they're all about suppressing pain. If you think about it, and there's myriads of choices. So when John would have
You froze, Jeff. I don't know if you can hear me. What comes to me when he's saying that is, when he's talking about those. Okay, go ahead. I think you're back.
Okay, well, he would come up with other word patterns for the people to say who were on the table, who were having a hard time honestly saying and feeling, I love the pain. We say, let's say their elbow's hurting, like had it happen to me one time. And he said, well, can you just make it okay that it hurts? Or can you willingly and lovingly, he would use those words, willingly and lovingly endure the pain, rather than directly say, I love it, because a lot of people are into enduring life, right? So different ways of just getting people to consider changing their perception of this four-letter word called pain, because that's essentially the capstone to the memory. And if we've been well programmed by the powers that be to have a negative attitude towards pain, that it's not a blessing in our life. So I wanted to throw that out, because I remember that was something that helped me when I was initially starting to have my points held, to wrap my head. Being a chiropractor, I even had a saying, enjoy life without pain. I would advertise that to my clients, but then, you become the thing you need the most. And so I became very good at getting everybody else out of pain, but then the tables got turned and I was given the chance to to do what I've been doing since 1991 and go on the journey to heal myself rather than everybody else.
Okay, so I have a question there. So what happens when we're on the table and we experience some physical pain and we're not capable of loving it? What do we do?
Well, we jump up and we run out of the room, I guess.
That's the last thing we do. Yeah. What do we do if we find ourselves, like, I've had people on the table who are in full body pain and they can't access any kind of love, forgiveness, or gratitude for it? What do we do then?
We lighten the pressure on the point to a point where they can.
Only if like, sometimes we can just be barely touching the point and the person has elicited their own pain to the point where they just absolutely can't stand it. What do? What is the point holdee on the table who's elicited their own pain and they can't love it, forgive it, or be grateful for it? What do they do?
I know this is a place that so many people have been at.
I'm going to answer it.
It is.
They feel
I would say try to visualize the violet light. Try to bring in some violet if
No.
you can visualize. I don't.
They feel how they really feel about it, which is usually they hate it.
Yeah, okay.
I hate the pain. It's called embracing the resistance to the resistance. It's really, really important to know.
Okay.
Really important to know for people on the table. They have to embrace what's really there, and then they really just hate that pain. And when they really feel how much they hate the pain, and they increase the hate, and they really intensify the hate, then they'll get the memories and the word patterns that go with that, and they can get an amazing transmutation. Then it comes back into, then they can access the love, the forgiveness, and the gratitude for the pain. But sometimes
That's
we
beautiful.
have been so programmed and conditioned to not experience the pain, not, what's really there. We have to find what's really there for the pain in order to truly transmute it. So we have to go back. Sometimes we have to go back, the resistance to the resistance, to the resistance, like it, and then we have to work our way back until we actually then do access the love and the forgiveness and the gratitude. Yeah. And even a little bit of gratitude for experiencing the pain can really, really help us access forgiveness and then eventually love. But it's very difficult, especially the lower emotions. Like, it's very difficult to access what is really the inner essence, which is really the true love. And we can lay there and wallow and wallow and wallow and wallow in the same patterns for months or years, and yet we haven't actually embraced what is the transmuter, the great transmuter, which is the inner essence of love. We haven't allowed ourselves that access yet, because we haven't gone back into what's really there. It's that authentic, back to that principle, feel what you feel with love. But if you can't feel love, you feel what's really there.
So I want to just point something out, that as a chiropractor, people would come to me in pain, and it's like that was what motivated them to even seek help.
Yeah. And
so I became like an aspirin, fix me, I'm broken. That's all and so I remember John Ray, and one of the first times don't know which seminar, but he made a point about chiropractic care. And I know a lot of people seek chiropractic care to alleviate physical pain in the spine or extremity adjusting or whatever. But he made the point, he said, it would be a lot more effective and long lasting for the person. It would put chiropractors out of business, which is what I did to myself when I went on this journey to heal myself. And that would be to have your points held, and then get a massage, and then get a chiropractic adjustment, do some kind of a physical therapy, but initially get in touch with how you created it. And it's not like disregarding these other modalities that exist, but I saw this over and over with patients, as they would always come back, and you'd have their little chart, and it would be, they kept recreating the same pain patterns. So when John Ray taught me that principle, it fit with what I'd seen in practice. And I'm sure a lot of other healing professionals have seen, as people recreate the same patterns when they're just looking at it from an external point of view. Somebody else can be responsible and get me out of pain. I can get through one more day.
Right. That reminds me of something I want to read. That I have my book here beside me, so I think it's in here. There it is. This is really appropriate. I'll just quickly read this. So it's an unpublished writing of John Whitman Ray called True Healing. The only true healing on the physical body takes place when a change of consciousness occurs. For a change of consciousness to occur, it is necessary to visualize the thoughts, and in brackets sensory memory, feelings, in brackets emotions, and word patterns, in brackets verbal and internal. I actually added those brackets on the mental level. that they may be re-experienced and released as a pattern of energy, thus freeing oneself of the continuation of suppressed thoughts, feelings, and words, that the outer manifestation of disease may be released, that the perfect pattern of DNA may then be made manifest. An understanding of the above law must be understood and applied that you may free yourself of bondage of your own creation. All body balancing techniques which do not embody the above information are temporary in their effects at best and do not bring about true healing. To move beyond mere balancing and into actual regeneration, we must effect a change of consciousness. The source of all disease, more brackets, which is after all our own inner creative essence of thought, feeling, and word, must be re-experienced on the mental level, that the physical bondage via our self-imposed reactive mechanisms may then drop away. Such is the path to ascension. I just thought that was very
Yeah, beautiful.
ties
Yeah,
into
beautiful.
what we're talking about. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
do
all
have
principles.
more. I know you.
No, it's
That's
all
it.
correct principles. Yeah.
Yeah, practicing and like applying is so important, and that's just, we don't have to wait until a body electronics point holding event to apply the principles in our daily life, and to take that time to really be still, breathe deep and regular, find the words, the memories, and the emotions, and access the forgiveness, gratitude, and love that's always present. That's the interesting thing about it. That's always present with us. It's just our inability to access it is the issue. So as we go upscale in the emotional body, we access it, incrementally. And but when we get to enthusiasm, which is the in relation resonant with the pineal gland, it's more than the pineal gland. We kind of say that in body electronics, but it's actually more than the pineal gland. What I saw when you truly access enthusiasm, all the endocrine system within the brain starts to light up. When we're truly able to access it through our ability to transmute pain. Because from pain we go into full enthusiasm, right? And when we can truly transmute pain, which then we get this. To me, that's where compassion in the painful level, particularly, which is the pituitary, resonating with the pituitary. When that occurs, when we're actually in that level of pain, and we're really feeling it and really transmuting it and getting lots of memory and so forth, that's where what I feel as the true compassion, and like this it's born there, and it expands there within that level of pain. It's like this, and the self-forgiveness. We can have self-forgiveness all the way along, especially as we access pain, in the lower emotions. But when we really get into the painful level, that when we're truly in that evolutionary process of transmuting pain, this immense amount of compassion is accessed there. Compassion for self, and of course then compassion for others. And then from there, when we are really, we get to the painful level of pain, and we're fully, like I said before, we're accessing the mental body. We're bringing, we're getting dualities. We're crossing that bridge into a whole new realm of existence, and then we go into the full-on emotional enthusiasm, which is that ability then to access, when we can fully access our enthusiasm, our emotional level of enthusiasm, we're fully accessing that internal inner essence of love, and that I am, like you said, Jeff. And it's there that we we move fully into the mental body, and life really takes goes into lots of what's the best way to describe that? It's a whole new level of perception. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I remember just the principle that I learned from the teachings of Saint Germain, which basically is in the same principle that we're talking about right now. But he said it very simply in the I Am books: the only creative force in the universe is thought, feeling, and the spoken word.
Yes.
And if you've ever read any of the teachings and the things that Saint Germain expressed and was capable of, as far as mastery over so many, the elements and all the stuff, it become, even the creation of the earth. That's how it was. Yeah. And so anyway, I just want to throw that in there as one of the principles that if anyone has a high regard for Saint Germain's teachings, it ties right in with what we're talking about.
I want to add something here too, is when, we change from love to light, when, like I mentioned before, when we're going to from the painful level of emotion into the mental body, accessing that, where we can start collapsing dualities with light. So with the violet light, and that's also very directly connected to the to teachings that Saint Germain made public, and brought into certain awareness. I have some other things to say about that, but I won't say that right now. But I want to say too that when we're working on the mental body level, and we've went through the entire emotional body, like we've really actually done it, there's this misconception that people have that then you're enlightened, you're in the mental body, you're in enthusiasm, and that's where you stay. You don't stay there. You're actually, it's not like you're stuck in the mental body and you've transmuted your emotional body and you have no more emotions. You actually feel all the emotions in the emotional body more. You have more awareness of emotion. And it's not like the emotional body disappears. As long as we are in a physical vessel on this earth, we have a fully functional emotional body. It's just how much resistance is attached to the emotional body. The emotional body is not something to be demonized or done away with. It's a very important process within our holistic vessel. So I just want to make that clear to people, because people think they have this misconceived idea of what enlightenment is, through maybe some readings or whatever. It's that we are aware, more acutely aware of everything holistic. So we're more acutely aware of our physicality. We're more acutely aware of our emotionality. We're more acutely aware of our mental body, where thoughts are formed and dualities are made separate with our attachments. And we're more aware of the spiritual connections to all that is. So we just become more and more.
Can I say something about, can I say something now?
Sure.
About, and it's just something that it keeps coming to me to bring this up, to tie light with light and sound. Like the musical scale has 7 notes, and we can look at language when we talk about thought, feeling, and the spoken word. Now Spanish still has soft vowels, and I was made aware of this place in Spain called the Dome. have either of you heard of the Dome in Spain?
No.
Where they do acoustic sounding. It's a healing center using sound. Sound is light, light is sound. And so you can Google it, you know, the Dome in Spain for, you know, sound healing. But I just want to sing, like, you know, let there be light. I wouldn't be surprised if God sang let there be light, because everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. But I just, the 7 emotions at the lower chakra all the way up the front of the body, we've seen them as the chakras in many different readings. But, you know, sound is light. So each of these chakras has a color associated with it. But they also have a sound. And I just want to sing those sounds to morphogenetically send an awareness to everybody that there's no separation between light and sound. It's the same, they have the same frequency, and that's why we have 7 emotions, so we transmute. But anyway, so the lowest chakra, and then to the second, the third being the navel, the fourth being the heart, the fifth being the throat, and the sixth and seventh being, it goes, you know, so it's like 1, oo, o, ah, e, oo, o, ah, e. That's 6. Then you go back to that would be this, you know, this. But anyway, when I'm having a challenging time and I just want, like, let's say I'm going for a walk on my property, and the trees are there, I find that if I'm like doing forest bathing, they call it, if I just sing that as I'm walking, I get energy as I do that. It's like I'm tuning into Mother Nature that way by singing the Body Electric. I think there's a book that's written with that title. I'm not sure, but or a song. I sing the Body Electric. I think there's a song. So the lowest chakra is and that's the only vowel that doesn't exist in Spanish. The Spanish, they've completely left that out. That's the lowest totem pole on the scale of emotions. And, you know, a lot of people, when they're, you know, is the sound they make when they're having a challenge in their life, but it's actually the frequency of the lowest chakra. So for whatever reason, and even in Spanish, where the vowels are still soft, where in English we've hardened the A, where in Spanish it's still ah for the heart chakra. It goes oo, o, ah, e. And if you look at the names of the Elohim, is e, o, e. It's the 3 of the soft vowels. Or even Jehovah, I think it's Jehovah is the correct pronunciation. They changed it by tweaking one vowel according to the OSB Bible, which I've read. But so Je-E-O-E, Jehovah. So these vowels and the understanding of these vowels are the emotional body. It's very important when you really take back your power. It's more the spoken word is very powerful, but the emotion, if you don't have the emotion behind it, it falls flat. So I just had a feeling to bring in that understanding. I don't know if that's something you've heard of, but I've listened to this guy do his chanting, and it's so, he's been invited by the Tibetan monks to chant with them. One of the few Anglo-Americans who was ever invited to actually chant with the Tibetans when they came to visit his dome. So he's created this place where the harmonics can circulate like that. And it's worth a look if nobody's heard of this place.
Yeah, we can find those internal sounds too as we listen more deeply. Those internal sounds are shown to us as we move through the scale of emotions. Becomes an internal process. Yeah, very much so. Do you have something you want to finish us off with here? Not finish off, but, you know, like complete our discussion today, Guy?
I think we sort of touched everything that's pertinent to the healing crisis. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just remind people of all the books that the various instructors have read, written, and websites, yours and
Yeah, and
Rest.
especially John Ray's books, the logic and sequence books. I think I say this on almost every video, but start off with, people are interested in actually doing the work. Start off with the How We Heal by Douglas Morrison. Any bookseller, any local bookseller has it. They're in print. My book, The Body Electronics Experience, can only be ordered from Amazon. And then the 3 metaphysical, that John Ray wrote, the Metaphysical Foundation books, Logic and Sequence, book 1 through and 3, are available on my website. You can just put it in the search bar, just put Logic and Sequence in. Or if you come to the Body Electronics group page on Facebook, I think on both, I'm sure on the Body Electronics group page, I have pinned the post that you can find those books, and you can download them and do whatever you like with them, print them off.
I hope to see you in June.
Pardon me?
We'll hope to see everybody in June.
Yes, yeah, and you'll see all the things that are required on that group page. I think I have maybe 4 pinned posts now, and if you look at each one of them, you'll see, get a little bit of an idea of what's necessary. The sooner to start preparing, the better. And that's why we're doing these videos every week. We'll probably do them, I was thinking about it, we'll probably do them, like, if you fellows are up for it, do it sort of every, like maybe till the end of March, or maybe even into April. And then we'll discontinue this series. And then when, what I mentioned last week was that after the 23rd of April, which is the date for the end of registration for the intensive, after that, I'll make a group, Zoom group, and we'll do probably weekly a live. I'll do a lecture, and then we'll have a good Q&A, and we'll do that right up until the, and that'll all be free of charge. We'll do that right up to the intensive. Okay. Do you have anything else to add at the moment, Jeff?
No, I don't. Thank you, though, for providing the space. It's awesome that you have the compassion to do so.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. So it's it doesn't. I look forward to these Tuesday discussions, and we'll keep them going. So thanks so much, fellas, and we'll sign off now, and see you next Tuesday.
All right. Thank you both.
Okay, toodles.
See you guys.